will focus on the impact of the war in Ukraine on illicit markets in Southeastern Europe. So since the full-scale Russian invasion on Ukraine in February 2022, the war has inflicted terrible suffering and destruction. Conflict has left lasting marks, resulting in countless human tragedies, displacement of people, geopolitical tensions, and profound social and economic turmoil. And one of the spillover consequences that is often underexplored is the impact of the war on illicit markets and flows. So how the war disrupted or might in the future disrupt some criminal markets, like the trafficking of drugs, how it is creating new opportunities for criminal groups, including smuggling of fuel, for example, or illicit financial flows, how people smuggling networks are using the largest refugee crisis since the World War II is just some of the questions that we will explore during our panel today. So last year, Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime partnered with the Center for Study of Democracy from Bulgaria in order to track, map, and analyze illicit flows involving specific criminal markets and assess whether and how the war in Ukraine might have impacted them. So we focused on 4 criminal markets, and the analysis resulted in publishing these 4 research briefs that you see on your screen. With us here today are the authors of the 3 of these reports. Ruggero Scatura, Senior Analyst at the Global Initiative and the author of the report, the first one here called Disruption or Displacement Impact of the Ukraine War on Drug Markets in Southeastern Europe. Ruggero, thank you. Sasha Đorđević, Field Coordinator for Serbia and Montenegro of the Global Initiative and author of the report Fuel to the Fire, Impact of the Ukraine War on Fuel Smuggling in Southeastern Europe. And Tihomir Bezlov, Senior Analyst at the Center for the Study of Democracy, the leading author of the report named Borderline, Impact of the Ukraine War on Migrant Smuggling in Southeastern Europe. Is Tihomir with us? Because I know we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, but if not, I am sure that he's joining us soon. The 4th brief, Cash is King, Impact of the Ukraine War on Illicit Financial Flows in Southeastern Europe, was authored by Vanya Petrova, Senior Analyst at the Center for the Study of Democracy. Unfortunately, Vanya was not able to join us today, but I would like to invite all of you to access all these and other reports on our website, and please feel free to share them with your networks. I'm sure you will find them really informative. Before I give floor to our panelists, I would like to invite our audience to please engage in discussions. Please pose questions, comment. You can use Q&A box or chat box that you see on your screen. And without further ado, I would like to start by giving floor to Ruggero. Ruggero, how did the war in Ukraine impact the drug markets in the region? Over to you, Ruggero. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanya. If the secretary can put up my short presentation, please, so that we can start.
I'll put it on now for you.
Thank you very much. But I can already say, like, while we wait for this, for the presentation, the work that I've been conducting for the past 1 year, pretty much thank you very much, of monitoring, and resulted, of course, in the drafting of this report, which analyzes drug markets going by category of drugs. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to go basically drug after drug, starting with cannabis, then heroin, then cocaine, and then synthetic drugs. Let's go to the next slide, please. So regarding cannabis markets, what we have seen since the Russian invasion of February 2022 is definitely a huge increase in demand, not only among the civilians, specifically to cope with the stress and trauma that the war is causing, but also increasingly among military personnel. Now, until the Russian invasion, cannabis in Ukraine was pretty much self-supplied, both with outdoor cultivation, which was pretty much extensive throughout the country, but also with indoor systems of cultivation that were able actually to supply and harvest actually more than 3-4 times a year. Now, because of the rigid temperatures, of course, since February 2022, and then again at the end of 2022 and 2023, to that increase in demand has definitely not corresponded an increase also in supply. And this has to do definitely, of course, with the rigid temperatures that, of course, in a way stops the outdoor cultivation, but also with coincided with shortages in supply and in terms of energy, but also in terms of fertilizer that are also used for indoor cultivation, derived, of course, from the international energy crisis attributable to the Russian invasion. Now, what we have observed is, in fact, after February 2022, that because of the shortages in supply, the prices have gone significantly up. You can see in the first row of the table at the bottom of the slide, from an average of 2 to 5, actually not 4 euro between 2020 and 2021. And actually throughout 2021, meaning including the first couple of months of 2022, we have seen instead towards the end of 2022 and in the first few months of 2023, prices have gone up to 10 euro per gram. In connection to the Western Balkans, what we have seen is that because of these shortages in supply in Ukraine, and because of instead of a stable, if not increased demand, we have seen definitely observed the possibility, or at least an opportunity, for traditional cultivators in the Western Balkans, and here I refer specifically to Albania mainly, but also to North Macedonia cultivators, especially after the legalization for cannabis, legalization for medical use of cannabis, but also increasingly parts of Kosovo, as well as far as indoor cultivation is concerned, also Serbia, to basically fill this potential gap in supply in Ukraine. And in fact, what we have observed is that traditional flows that originate in the southern part of the Western Balkans, that were originally aimed at reaching Western Europe and in general West, as you can see here in the dark green arrows, were started to sort of like move as well throughout the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, also going basically northeast instead of only northwest. And on top of that, what we've seen is that the shortages in supply in Ukraine have also opened up opportunities for other important, I would say, origins of cannabis cultivated in general in the West, particularly in Spain, where we have identified a specific case of multiple kilograms of cannabis that was found hidden in humanitarian aid that started from Spain and then entered Ukraine around Lviv Oblast. Next slide. Heroin. So as you can see here, this is a generic, I would say, representation of how heroin, traditionally, of course, being produced in Afghanistan, reaches its main consumption market, which is Western Europe. Until the Russian invasion of 2022, together with the so-called Balkan route, and I'm going to go back to this, a typical flow of heroin used to go from Afghanistan through Central Asia, especially from Kazakhstan, and then entering Russia, direction Ukraine, especially around Kharkiv region. Ukraine until 2021, 2022 was probably the biggest consumption market for heroin in the region, in the European continent. with 1.7% of the adult population injecting heroin, which, by the way, only injecting, meaning that the number of people using heroin as opposed to only injecting it, so meaning also smoking it, was likely higher. However, because of the Russian invasion, what we have seen is that the important flows that used to enter Ukraine in the east basically dried up because definitely of the intensification of hostilities from a military perspective. To that, what we have observed is instead something that corresponded along the Balkan routes, instead an intensification of flows. We have seen definitely an increase in seizures, not only along the Western Balkan route, meaning starting in Bulgaria and exiting the region direction northwest in the north of Serbia direction Hungary, and then Slovakia, Austria direction Germany, and so on. But what we've seen is also in the pre-section, so to say, of the Balkan route, which is especially of course the route that from Afghanistan goes through mainly Iran and then enter Turkey. What we've seen is a huge increase, definitely an increase in seizures at both the eastern and the western border of Turkey, especially at the border, as you can see at the bottom right part of the map, the border between Turkey and Iran, especially around the village of Hakkari, which is supposed to be particularly relevant hotspot, as well as around the northwestern border of Turkey, especially the border with Bulgaria. So at these two sections, we've seen an increase in seizures of heroin transiting through the region, as opposed to the basically decrease and almost absence, I would say, of seizures along the Central Asian route across Kazakhstan, Russia, Ukraine, direction west and northwest. Definitely this, what we were expecting though is an impact at least on wholesale and retail prices, at least in the Balkans. But as of today, we haven't seen really any major changes. So we can definitely conclude that when it comes to heroin, there are definitely more flows, probably intensified, but in terms of impact on prices and availability at the retail level, also given that the Western Balkans are not a huge consumption market for heroin, the situation appears to be, as of today at least, relatively stable. We can go to the next slide, which I believe is cocaine. So regarding cocaine, until the Russian invasion of February 2022, and which included, of course, the naval blockade of the port of Odessa, which is situated in the northwestern part of the Black Sea, very close to the border with Romania. Until the Russian invasion, the role of Odessa was extremely important, not only for the Black Sea, but I would say for the wider Southeastern European region as a key entry points for cocaine directly shipped from Latin America. What we have observed is that until then, the price, especially at the retail level of cocaine, was I would say pretty much the same as the retail price of the wider region, so ranging between 100 and 120 euro per gram. However, since the Russian naval blockade and the consequent operational stop that is continuing as of today, so basically right now the port of Odessa is simply not working, what we have seen is definitely a strong shortage in the supply of cocaine throughout the country, and this has also contributed to a sharp increase also in the prices at the retail level. Prices that at the retail level were, as said before, range between 100 and 120 euro per gram, went up to 140, 50, 60, and even 70, if not 80 euro per gram throughout Ukraine. However, to that operational stop of the port of Odessa, and with Odessa no longer playing a key role when it comes to welcoming, so to say, flows of cocaine from Latin America, to that basically corresponded instead an intensification of arrivals of loads of cocaine directly from Latin America or with stops in Western Europe to Southeastern European ports, and in particular the Adriatic ports of Albania, Montenegro, and Croatia, meaning Durrës, Bar, and particularly Ploče and Rijeka, as well as Greek ports in the Ionian Sea, particularly Athens and Thessaloniki, as well as other Black Sea ports, especially the port of Varna in Bulgaria and the port of Constanța in Romania. In fact, after a year of basically disruption with prices going up in Ukraine at the retail level, what we've seen, especially when interviewing a law enforcement authority around February, March, and April 2023, we were always hearing about this argument of cocaine now being back in the Ukrainian market. However, what has changed now, given that Odessa is not only the main entry point, is instead a specific increase also in seizures of big loads of cocaine entering the region in unusual place until basically the time of the Russian invasion, which is particularly the southwestern border of Ukraine, so the areas that border with Romania, Hungary, but also Slovakia and Poland. Regarding a specific hotspot at the border with Romania is the corridor basically between Suceava in the north of Romania and Chernivtsi area, which is supposed to be an important entry point of cocaine now as of today in Ukraine. And in fact, to support actually the fact that the Ukrainian law enforcement argument that cocaine is back in the market, what we have seen is not only a concentration of seizures, but also the fact that the price at the retail level has also started to decrease significantly. So we are now looking at the price of cocaine, which ranges between 125 to 135 euro per gram, basically almost as pre-February 22 invasion times. So in a way, basically what we argue here, what we have argued in the report is that probably cocaine traffickers have now found a way to supply the Ukrainian market after an initial disruption. The last slide, please. Synthetics. So our the work that we've conducted here. So one of the main conclusions that we have come up with when studying the synthetic drug markets in the Western Balkans, in Southeastern Europe, is that the region can be roughly so to say, divided into two main areas, at least as consumption patterns are concerned. On the one side, we have the western part of Southeastern Europe, which is composed by definitely Albania, Montenegro, parts of Kosovo, then Bosnia, as well as probably parts of Croatia, which are particular of which markets and population are probably, I would say, relatively new to the synthetic drugs market. The consumption is very seasonal, depending, of course, especially on the tourist season, particularly in occasion of festivals and so on and so forth. So, and also the production is still quite basic, meaning that most of the synthetic drugs are imported, especially from traditional countries of production, situated in Western Europe, particularly the Netherlands. While on the other side, instead, what we have observed is definitely in North Macedonia, in Serbia, and in Romania and Bulgaria, what we have seen is that definitely not only consumption pattern, which pretty much resembles those of Ukraine, so a large use of amphetamine type stimulants, as well as what are known substances that are known as salts or legal hikes, as well as they're called in Romania. We're talking about new synthetic stimulants such as methadone or alpha PPP. We've seen definitely a strong increase in consumption as well as in production. Of course, since definitely the Russian invasion of February 2022. And one thing that we have also observed, a pattern that is observable not only in Ukraine, but also in neighboring Romania, and then going down all the way to North Macedonia, is that increasingly since February 2022, at the time of police operations aimed at dismantling laboratories of synthetic drugs, what we have seen is that if until the very recent past, most of the precursors that were used for the synthesis of amphetamine type stimulants were particularly, it was particularly common to find ephedrine, pseudoephedrine. What we've seen instead is that at the time of the dismantlement of these laboratories, also the other substances that were seized were instead industrial precursors, such as BMK in particular, which points at a different way of producing synthetic drugs now in the region. So no more based on ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, which are used for processes that are reportedly difficult to scale up, but more a shift in the production by using industrial methods that guarantee higher levels of production to very likely also increased demand. And the increased demand is very likely attributable not only to, as far as Ukraine is concerned, not only to a general will by the civilian population to evade the reality imposed basically by the war, but also is reportedly also increased at the front line in combination by military personnel in combination with cannabis use. And then we can move to the last slide. Just to sum it up, I said before, cannabis, of course, we have seen, I said before, an increase in demand, especially among the military personnel. And if the supply won't be recovered in Ukraine, definitely this is gonna open up definitely for more opportunities for traditional cultivators in the southern part of the Balkans. Cocaine, as said, the Russian naval blockade of the port of Odessa has already opened up for opportunities for traffickers to exploit even more than they are already exploiting southeastern European ports. And then cocaine flows originally directed toward northwest are gonna likely also move towards northeast. Heroin, the central route across Russia and entering Ukraine in the eastern and Kharkiv, those flows have dried up. To that has corresponded instead an intensification of flows along the Balkan route. And with synthetic drugs instead, if on the one side, studies on amphetamine type stimulants are already producing also results in terms of how harm reduction programs can tackle the issues of dependence. At the same time, the appearance of new substances, in particularly alpha PVP and methadone, poses important questions regarding how to deal with the dependence to these new substances. And I will leave it this for now, and happy to address any comments or questions.
Thank you, Rogero. Thank you for this great presentation and presentation of all the identified trends and changes in flows and prices. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, so I will just like to once again invite the audience to use the chat box and Q&A box. So please, towards the end, we will read all your questions and our panelists will answer those. Tihomir, thank you for joining us. I would like to proceed with you and your presentation. So over the last decade, Southeastern Europe and Western Balkans in particular have been a crossroad for irregular migration. So what did we observe along the Western Balkan or Balkan route since 2022? And what is the impact of the war in Ukraine on refugee flows, for example, and what impact it had on migrant smuggling? Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to describe briefly the context of resurgence of Western Balkans route. Could you next slide, please? According to Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, illegal migration in 2022 reached the level of refugee crisis in 2016, the level of 2016. The Western Balkans actually provide the largest flow of irregular migrants to Europe, European Union. About 45% of all registered illegal migrants, or 145,000 illegal migrants. The Balkans route is one of the three gates, let's say in this way, of illegal migrants since the beginning of century. And other two is North Africa, Italy, and Morocco, Spain. This development provoked reaction of Austria and Netherlands, and Austria vetoed the entry of Bulgaria and Romania in Schengen area, and Netherlands vetoed only Bulgaria. Actually, the illegal migrants crisis in 2022 coincided with the beginning of war in Ukraine, and which led to Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. Next slide, please. My institute, the Center for the Study of Democracy, and Global Initiative together try to assess the significance of Ukrainian migration. For this purpose, the available statistic data from different Balkan countries and international institutions were analyzed, and additional with series of in-depth interviews with experts of the field in the Balkan countries, experts in the migration field. We try to estimate the influence of Ukrainian refugee crisis, actually. To recall some basic numbers about the Ukrainian migration, according UNHCR, in the end of 2020, about 50 million refugees from Ukraine reached Europe. Of them, roughly of the beginning of July 2023, about 8.2 million returning in Ukraine. In the Balkan region, about 1.8 million people will enter in Romania, 2 million in Hungary, and in Bulgaria we have about almost 1 million people, but 170 have request status, mainly refugees or status on some protection. The impact of this was that Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria need to redeploy the border police officers, security police officers, migration and custom officers, and also allocate the financial support to Ukrainian migrants. Countries such Hungary and Romania were significantly affected in terms of transfer of human resources from south border to north or east border with Ukraine. And with case with Hungary, for example, this lead to real change of the situation of Serbian-Hungarian border. For example, in previous years, after, for example, 2015, unsuccessful attempts to enter in Hungary per illegal migrants was between 12 and 13. And in the summer of 2022, the number of this attempt decreased to 5 or 6. Next slide, please. We try to estimate the real number of illegal migrants go through Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, and we use the official data. Official data of registered illegal migrants for Bulgaria was about 18,000 and 778, and Greece 18. Actually, the two countries has the same number, but additional to Bulgaria, in Serbia we have entry points from India, Tunis, Cuba, Burundi, and so on. The flow estimate a real number of people who go through Bulgaria, Romania, and Serbia was for Greece about between 53,000 to 56,000. For Bulgaria was 36, 37. For Serbia was 17, 90,000. And our next slide, please. Our idea was to find good methodology to estimate the real number. For Bulgaria, we use opportunity to have figures from 3 different points of statistic. First was entry point, second of illegal migrants, second was in-country registered illegal migrants, and the third was exit point of these illegal migrants, mainly Serbian and Romanian borders. And we use one very important source of data: how many migrants have registration in Eurodac. This is European database about with biometric data from migrants, all migrants in Bulgaria, which police capture in entry point or inside in the country, have to receive registration. And when we compare this data, the people with Eurodac registration and the people without Eurodac registration, we can construct the coefficient, which is very useful to calculate the real number of migrants. Actually, we create coefficient, and with this coefficient we multiply the number of migrants. Example, the 2022 we have about 80,000 registered illegal migrants and about 50% unregistered migrants. We multiply this 80,000 with 2, and we use in additional data from refugee centers and receive this number official, our number of estimation. Now in Bulgaria in 2023, 2023, we have about, until beginning of October, we have about 60,000, but unfortunately the unregistered migrants is about 80%. This means that we have to multiply by 4. And in our estimation show that now we have about 40,000 migrants. Of course, we have to distract the number of people who stay in Bulgarian refugee centers. There are about 4,000. And this means that actually in the moment, this is the figure. In 2022, we did the same with Greece and use expert estimation about the Serbian. And we received these figures between 106,000 and 111,000 real migrants. Next slide, please. In our analysis show that the structure of smuggling networks in 2022 is almost similar to the structure in 2015, 2016, but with some difference. For example, we have new migrant flow, for example, from North Africa. With case with Bulgaria, we have Moroccans, who are about third largest group. The same situation is in Serbia with Tunisian. What is really interesting in our new data show that migrants started to overtake many of roles previous occupied by local nationals of Balkans country. For example, these roles like recruiters, drivers, guides people, and in new situation we see, for example, in the low level, for example, in Bulgaria or in Greece, we see a lot of, in case with Greece, a lot of Bulgarians who operate like drivers. The same situation we see in Bulgaria, for example, a lot of drivers who are from North Macedonia, Serbia, Romania, Ukraine, Poland, even some from Western Europe. Another new development is increasing use of encrypted internet and phone application like Telegram, WhatsApp signals, and this is very serious problem for police and special services because they can't solve this problem with encryption. And other very interesting development is goal of online payment and money transfer services. And last but not least is the increase of the use of violence. In Bulgaria, for example, we notice refusal to stop during police checks, traffic jams, serious transport accidents, and even we have 5 policemen killed in 2022. In Kosovo, there have been cases of use of firearms among illegal migrants. There are many incidents with violence in Serbia, including use of firearms. Next slide, please. And conclusion, what we see that human smuggling networks in Western Balkan actually is the part of transnational networks. For example, the network started in Afghanistan and in Germany or in Sweden. What is very interesting that these smuggling networks are very adaptive, and they continue rise their capacity. If you compare 2022 with 2023, we see significant rise of number of migrants who succeed to go through. In countries like Bulgaria and Greece, the human smuggling network actually is the biggest networks of organized crime, and like number, it is not clear about like financing. And something additional about Ukrainian refugee crisis. We see that we don't have these processes like in 2022.
Thank you, Tihomir. Thank you for this great presentation. I particularly like the efforts to reveal the dark numbers, right? We know that official data that we receive from institutions are of course only on the number of registered cases, and that number is usually only a fraction. So just the intent to try to understand and to reveal the true scale, or as you said, the dark number, it's really commendable. So we're not running out of time, but we have to be mindful of the time. So Sasha, I will just go straight to you and your presentation. Especially us from the Western Balkans or former Yugoslavia, we remember the widespread illegal fuel trade back in the 90s. So what is the scale of fuel smuggling nowadays? And what is the impact of the war in Ukraine on current fuel smuggling trends across the region?
Thank you, Anna. So, yeah, I think Tihomir is good. So basically, this research explores parallels in fuel smuggling between past conflicts in the former Yugoslavia in the 19th and the current war in Ukraine, but also it covers instability in Libya with effects on the Balkans. And all true parallels between different conflict situations are valuable insights. So it's always necessary to be cautious, because the reason is simply to avoid perceived similarity where those similarities actually don't exist. And in this case, the former Yugoslavia and Ukraine serve as final destination for fuel smuggling, while Russia and Libya are basically exit points. Also, smuggling in the former Yugoslavia and the Ukraine was and is demand driven, where the situation in Russia and Libya is basically in that context is supply driven. So basically this is very important notes just to take into the consideration that everything is not the same in conflicts, but nevertheless lessons learned from familiar conflict backgrounds such as former Yugoslavia can help especially policymakers to create and identify potential strategies to avoid mistakes from the past conflicts. So basically this whole presentation, as the report that we published with together GI and the CSD in August this year, so basically is divided in two parts. the first parts reveals lessons learned from the war in the former Yugoslavia, while the second part actually explore 3 fuel smuggling areas that can potentially foster fuel smuggling in the future. So, but one important, this illicit market of fuel smuggling is not like so profitable like I don't know, drug trafficking or even human smuggling. So the level of profit is not so high. It's on the lower scale, but nevertheless, this illicit trade actually, it's very persistent. So it operates over like more than 3 decades. So never stops, which is like, which is very interesting. So the first part of the presentation, so basically deals with the lessons from the history, and maybe some of the participants already know. So fuel smuggling, the zenith of fuel smuggling in the Western Balkans occurred during the turbulent 1919, during especially through the wars in the former Yugoslavia. But after that, it has been going on for over 3 decades. And the period of 1990s was actually the main elements, the main characteristic of this period was basically the conflict, economic crisis, sanctions, embargoes, weak governance, corruption, very porous borders, and fragmented authority. And all these factors actually affected and fostered the flourishing illicit trade of fuel smuggling, as also for example, another illicit market was cigarette smuggling. And basically, before we continue with the current situation, I just want to briefly explain what are the lessons learned. So from the fuel smuggling in the 90s in the former Yugoslavia. So firstly, the illicit trade during that time was planned, coordinated, and executed by individuals, organized crime groups, and network operating across national borders. And basically, you can see on this slide that all illicit flows of fuel actually end up in Serbia, but from the 3 main channels or the countries, like the sources was Bulgaria, Romania, and Albania. So, and actually this is, and after Serbia, it was distributed in the countries that were affected by war. So basically, this moment actually created new political elites and created the first links of cooperation between different organized crime groups in the region, and they didn't care about like ethnicity and nationality, which was very important for the future activity of criminal organization. So the second lessons learned is that corruption played a very important role in enabling fuel smuggling in the regions. And basically, illicit financial flows at that time were made possible only through political protection and involvement of a company that closely connected with the ruling political powers in the region, especially in Bulgaria, Romania, and Albania. For example, in Romania, there was also like a case that prosecution started against the very high officials in the government of Romania at that time in the 90s. The third lessons learned is basically that conflict affected porous border in the region and underdeveloped. So basically, and the borders was at that time was not only like completely confirmed and unknown. So, and these porous borders significantly facilitate the trafficking of fuel and other demanding goods and cigarettes, and the absence of robust border control actually allowed criminal activities to flourish and even like worsening the situation in the 90s. And for example, on official estimates, like only for Serbia, that profit from fuel smuggling that ended in the end in Cyprus in the 90s, but actually amounted 5 to 11 billions dollars at that time, which actually highlight the issue's magnitude. And the final lesson learned, because most of the the hotspots, criminal hotspots that actually allow fuel smuggling was like, I don't know, for example, like natural places like, I don't know, Skadar Lake in Montenegro. So at that time and over now, we actually don't have like some kind of impact assessment of fuel smuggling on the nature and environmental damage by illicit fuel trade, because very often that fuel, like, I don't know, flow to the water or something like that. So basically, this is like 4 lessons learned. So next slide. So the next slide, so basically it's titled like Darkness of the Present. And there are basically 3 areas that can potentially be very good for fuel smuggling and for the fuel traffickers in the future. So first is basically Danube flows. So Danube flows is one. So the Danube was used for the fuel smuggling in the 90s, and after that, and even now. So basically, there are a lot of seizures of fuel on the Danube, especially, for example, in Serbia. And basically illegal fuel flows on the Danube are sailing together with the legal ones. And there is a Danube commission that actually monitored the flows on the Danube, and they assessed last year that the legal transport of petroleum products on the Danube is stable, but at the same time, fuel smuggling at the river also remains pressing issues. And 2 countries are very important for the fuel smuggling. So basically, this is Bulgaria and Serbia, and they are the 2 Balkan countries most affected by fuel smuggling of the Danube. Serbia is a transit country as well as destination for illegal fuel, primarily because higher fuel prices in Serbia compare to other countries in the region. Also, areas marked as fuel smuggling points on the map. You can see like almost 40 different critical points that actually are quite important for fuel smugglers and for the ships to transfer fuel from one ship to another. Along the border, basically those critical points are at the border between Serbia and Romania and Serbia and Croatia. And these are locations where is convenient for boats to cross. In other words, where the river is basically narrowest and the calmest in the flow. Other significant smuggling areas for fuel smuggling are near settlements and places nearby border crossing with relatively good road connections, access roads to the border also, and river channels. So as I said, in Serbia, there are nearly like 40 locations, and it will be good for the future actually to also explore these critical points, not only for the fuel smuggling, but also for other illegal commodities to actually identify these critical points, which will actually help law enforcement to increase their surveillance, etc. So the primary method of fuel smuggling on the Danube involves transferring oil from foreign ships. So I'm talking about Serbia to barges and other vessels. So the process usually entails the foreign ship carrying fuel, slowing down at a specific location that actually smugglers already defined, and then the smaller vessels like come too close to the bigger ship where the fuel, and actually transport fuel from another ship to ship, and fuel then is illegally transferred from the ship to the vessels, but with the entire operation taking about an hour. And after unloading the fuel, the vessel continue its journey with smaller boats, transport the smuggling fuel to the land, and after that, from the land going to the trucks and to the final destination. And for example, in Serbia, the final destinations are small petrol stations close to the border, but also like agriculture companies, and that actually also use or big farms in Serbia, in Vojvodina, that actually also use, because the smuggled fuel is much more cheaper than the legal one. And so basically we have like a different from the ships to the trucks, which is important. The next slide. So the next.
Sasha, I'm sorry, I just have to again just remind about the time, because it's very strict. There are other panels after this one, so maybe 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so basically the second is it's about like fuel smuggling through the Mediterranean, with a specific focus on Albania and Libya. And basically this connection began in 2020, and because there was like one investigation leading by a US authority about the involvement of Albanian and Montenegrin criminal networks in fuel smuggling operation linked to the entities, private companies also sanctioned by international organization and some national states in from Libya. But after that, 2020, there was like one time of peace that actually, can you go one slide, please, back? Yes. Yeah, great. So, but actually there was one calm place and everything. So when the war started in Ukraine in 2022, so basically this route on Mediterranean actually began to increase the activities. So, and one of the important, so the breakthrough came in March 2022 when authorities in the port of Durrës made a significant discovery by confiscating 80 tons of illicit fuel at the port. And after that, there was also several major seizures, and in the end, Albania appear like a country in the region that actually seized the most illegal fuel. Also, there was also one case involving Russian crew members. Again, the incident occurred in Port of Durrës, and that operation led to the apprehensions of 22 members crew involved in the illicit transfer of oil, and the confiscation was more than 22,000 tons of Russian oil valued at over 40 million euros. So basically this flow actually could warm up with the war in Ukraine. Next slide. And the final area is basically like the Black Sea. Over right now, there is no, actually during the research we cannot identify any illicit flows, but but actually one country that is allowed to import Russian crude oil from the EU member states is Bulgaria, and despite the EU ban. So basically that in that case, Bulgaria continues to receive a substantial amount of Russian fuel, so more than 20,000 tons of fuel daily. So basically, and what is and what else? Basically, the huge economic activities. And all true, because right now everything is illegal, but there is like a policy of the EU actually to ban all countries of the European Union member states to import Russian fuel, and basically this should happen in 2024. And actually this open a huge opportunity for fuel smuggling, and which is important. On the graph you can see that the oil tanks right now regularly flows, and mostly from Russia to Turkey, but some of the ships actually, oil tanks goes to the port of Burgas in Bulgaria, where the biggest refinery, one of the biggest refinery in Bulgaria is located. And sometimes those also ships goes to the port of Constanța in Romania with actually, and what is important right now, it's very difficult to identify illicit flows because the company that actually is located in Bulgaria is also close to the it's basically the Russian company, the second largest. It's connected with Lukoil. And right now there is also law in Bulgaria to actually forbid import of Russian oil, except for countries, for Bulgaria and Ukraine. So this area is huge opportunity, like if, especially in 2024, if EU decide to actually ban completely import of Russian crude oil. So, and final slide. So basically the conclusion. So as I said at the beginning, the scale of fuel smuggling is not the same in the region as in the 90s, but it continues to occur. So the Danube River remains a significant hotspot for fuel smuggling, especially in the context of closeness of the port of Burgas and port of Constanta with the Danube. So this is like the whole line actually that can connect the Black Sea and the North Sea. And the Mediterranean route is quite important because Libya is also one of the countries that where very often there are quite important criminal actors that operates in fuel smuggling, and actually Port of Durrës in Albania happen to be very important criminal hotspots for their illicit activities. And so basically, as I said, the ongoing Ukraine war could be poses a potential risk for Russian crude oil through the Black Sea. And in the end, we try to identify in the research 3 countries that are actually mostly affected by fuel smuggling, and these are Albania, Bulgaria, and Serbia. So thanks.
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you. We are on time, and I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. I currently don't see anything in the Q&A box, but please feel free to ask or just comment or ask questions to our panelists. And while we are waiting to receive some questions from the audience, I have a question for all panelists. Just so the research intended to assess the impact of the war in Ukraine on illicit markets. And so this is more research, or let's say methodological question. So how did you assess this? How do we say that some of the changes in trends and flows that you identified are indeed a result of the war itself? And what were maybe some of the main challenges in this respect that you as researchers encountered in your respective research? Whoever wants to start.
Sasha, you want to go first and then I follow up? For me, it's the same. I can
go first. Okay.
I can actually start with one specific aspect of your question, which is the challenges, especially. So we work under very strong assumptions here, especially at the beginning of the research. Probably the biggest challenge that I at least have encountered at the time of putting together some thoughts and also working on the working hypothesis of the research was talking to especially representatives of law enforcement authorities in the Western Balkans. At the time of the first rounds of interviews that we have conducted, the general understanding was that because of course they represent law enforcement, and because they are sort of like, they tie their judgment of whatever situation on the hard evidence that they can collect. At the time of collecting the data, we were interviewing them. So what is your understanding? How do you think that this specific drug flow that was passing by this specific area or corridor might be impacted? How has it already been impacted? 9 out of 10, they were simply saying, no, we are simply too far from the war. and from a geographical perspective, and so we can't really tell you anything. And but at the same time, and then this was the very initial phase of the research. But then this actually triggered, in a way, also the next sort of like working hypothesis. So well, let's start from the assumption that law enforcement authorities has noticed pretty much no changes. Like there's nothing going on when it comes at least to drugs. So what's next? And in that case, so we basically use that. They're basically the denial of any change in the drug markets to basically start asking the right question to the people that might have instead be in possession of information. And that means particularly community that are affected when it comes to drugs. For example, if we see no changes from a security perspective, then it might be that there must be changes, for example, in the purity of the substances that are supplied that come from the East, particularly. So when it comes to heroin and so on. And we have seen, for example, that in Romania. What we have seen is that between I would say mid-2022 until the very beginning of 2023, what we have observed is that the quality, at least the perceived quality, we're not talking about purity, because like, purity comes from law enforcement authorities. The perceived quality of the substance that people who inject heroin in Romania has definitely gone down. And then, of course, so you basically start with that assumption. You say, okay, well, from a security perspective, maybe there's not much to say. So you try to address the issue of the drug markets from instead a demand supply, from a consumption perspective. So this is a way to work with also with the limitations of the case.
Thank you. Anything to add, Sasha, from your experience, and Tihomir from yours?
Yeah. So in researching fuel smuggling, I think one of the challenges was basically to access data that was like especially about the fuel seizures, and there was like a push and backs. But in the end, we actually find out that the level of fuel seizures in the region actually skyrocketed when the war, when we compare 2022 and 2021 for like 4 times. And this is one of the issue, but the problem is, so the fuel is basically, it's not like the drug, so like cocaine, heroin. So this is the illicit commodities with the fuel, because it's illicit, so it's illegal commodities. And basically people find out different ways how to avoid excise goods, how to avoid taxes, and etc. And with the Bulgarian case, everything was much more like, because there was one good quote from Albania that actually the situation completely right now, it's quite similar what happened in the former Yugoslavia in the 90s, but actually one main difference is that the import of Russian crude oil to Bulgaria was legal. So in the case in the former Yugoslavia, everything was like everything was illegal, and that was the huge difference. And maybe the 2024, the next year, will be, I think, very important for to assess actually the real level of fuel smuggling in the region, and which is, for me, it's very interesting, given that economy, the legal flows of fuel and oil are quite very well regulated in the region. So this is like that, even that market actually persisted in the last 3 decades, like and even evolved in the some way. But the next year will be important, like especially if there is much more stronger sanctions and dependence on not only the Balkan countries, but also the EU member states for gas and for the oil from Russia. But right now the situation is calm. There is another markets for the Russian crude oil, and there are a lot of like reserves in the region of fuel that actually, and the government also, in the most government in the Western Balkan countries actually froze the prices to to stabilize market, because when the war in Ukraine started, the prices was like skyrocketed for. But right now, we will see. Depends also like the intensity of the war and what will happen in next year.
Thank you, Sasha. Tihomir, anything to add on your side? We will have 2 minutes left.
We have the same problem with statistic data. For example, all Western Balkans countries have different category of illegal migrant statistics. For example, one part of the country estimate repel illegal immigrants, other estimate only people who are in refugee centers. If we like to make some reasonable assumption, we have to ask about experts' data, about we have to compare the data from different countries. For example, we compare the data in Yugoslavia, in Serbia, in Austria, and try to find actually some connection between these links. Unfortunately, we don't have uniform statistic in Western Balkans, and this is part of the problem, by the way, of good estimation of situation.
Thank you. I'm just trying to see if we can squeeze in another question, as I wanted to ask you a couple of things. I don't know, Sasha, maybe if you can briefly, just in a minute, tell me, so there is a likelihood that Bulgaria will face prohibition on importing crude oil from Russia. What are the implications of that?
I think in that
1
case,
minute.
if
In a minute.
in one sentence. So basically, I think that fuel smuggling in that case will flourish. So in short.
Okay. It's shortly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I really want to thank our panelists, Tihomir, Sasha, Ruggiero. Thank you for your presentations. Your reports identify and analyze current trends, but they're also forward-looking, in the sense that they identify potential scenarios and developments, which indeed should be our food for thought. Maybe we didn't have enough time during this panel to address all of these future scenarios. So I would like to invite our audience to please access these reports on our website and read the full reports. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. The Global Initiative and our observatory in Southeastern Europe, we are committed to continue monitoring and analyzing new trends and dynamics across the region, to research and deepen understanding and knowledge base around organized crime. I also want to take this opportunity to really thank our partners, Center for Study of Democracy. It was really great to partner with you on this project, and we are looking forward to continue working with you in the future and promoting and talking, disseminating findings from these briefs. Thank you so much, Tihomir. Thank you to your colleagues. Thank you to our audience for your attention. And in the next 75 minutes, please sign up for the last sessions of OC24. Thank you one more time, and goodbye.
Bye.
Right.